Een heel bijzondere aflevering, deze keer met een heel bijzondere gast, Roberto Martinez, Spaans voetbaltrainer, voormalig profvoetballer en ondertussen al 6 jaar bondscoach van België. We zijn daarvoor speciaal afgezakt naar Tubize, het kloppende hart van de Belgische voetbalgemeenschap en de thuishaven van onze Rode Duivels en de Red Flames. Ik zeg wel degelijk we, want ik ben hier niet alleen. Ik heb Tom Jonkers, manager talent management bij Argenta, meegenomen. En niet ik, maar Tom zal in het hoofd kruipen van Roberto Martinez. Er zijn natuurlijk heel veel leiderschapslessen te stelen waar ook jij mee aan de slag kan in jouw organisatie of in jouw HR-team. Ik ben bijzonder benieuwd en volgens mij is Tom Jonkers ook bijzonder zenuwachtig. Geniet ervan. Welkom bij Brainpickings, de podcast voor HR-professionals, leidinggevenden en ondernemers. Ik ben Lesley, founder van Zigzag HR. En met Zigzag HR dagen we jou uit om jezelf en je vakgebied heruit te vinden. Abonneer je dus zeker op dit YouTube-kanaal of volg ons op jouw favoriete podcastkanaal.
Experts say you can learn as a company a lot from a football team, and I agree. Professor Schollaert from the University of Ghent even points out that a lot of companies try to imitate the togetherness that typically defines a football club. But that's not easy to do so. Football knows more highs and lows. It brings people in more extreme situations. Third place in a World Cup or a painful loss against France or Wales keeps resonating for a long time, especially when you were there as a fan, even so. But even in those darkest moments, you feel that football brings a connection that is unique and not easy to copy. But we can try to unravel the mystery a little bit. And in doing so, we need some help. And who's better to help us than somebody who experienced this day by day? Welcome, Mr. Martinez.
Thank you.
Very glad to have the chance to get into your head today. And I will start by asking you the first question. How do you experience your connection with the Red Devils as a team and their performances?
Well, I think what you said is very evident. I think football is a reflection of any group of people working towards the same goal. So it's very easy to make parallels between business, between groups in education and sport teams. And obviously our connection is to drive a dream of a nation and then try to execute it down to the talent that these footballers have. This is a unique group of people with a lot of talent that they can really compete for everything. So I think that's what the beautiful part of my job is, to be able to enjoy a group of people with an incredible talent, that they've got a huge human quality, something that maybe many people can see. And we got the chance to drive the dream of a nation. That's why it makes it so beautiful. And probably that's the biggest difference with any business group, is that in sports, you always share the view and the opinion of fans and people, that they are very much attached to your outcome. Sometimes in business, you can work well on Monday morning, you know the results, you can be critical, but nobody else will know about it. In football, obviously on Saturday you got the game, on Sunday you get in a taxi, and the taxi driver will tell you what went wrong and what you should have done better. And I think that's the emotional part that it makes it different. But in the aspect of a group of people, a group of brains working for the same objective, is exactly the same.
Yeah. Every fan becomes a coach after the game, you already mentioned, but you're the real head coach. So you select the squad, you motivate your players, you define the tactics. From an HR perspective, that's a lot of people management skills. What's your type of coaching style?
Well, I think obviously I manage footballers one day. That's a match day. The rest of the days I manage human beings, and that's the people side is essential. For me, a happy person, a happy individual will perform well, will perform better than an individual that he feels under stress, an individual that is not in a good place. And I think that's what we try to put a lot of attention, how happy the players in between games, how much they can enjoy the challenge, for bigger, as big as the challenge as it can be. that's a dream as a young boy or a young girl. You want to play in a football team that it can challenge for big achievements. So I think that's the important side. Differentiate a little bit between the footballer and the human being, and work around that in a very, very specific way.
Yeah. But it all comes down to performing on match day. So how do you keep those people engaged that end on the bench or maybe somewhere further?
Well, yes, I think that's essential. When you're a group of players or a group of people that know everyone can be given the opportunity to show what they can do. A little bit my style, and it's something that I developed over the years, is something that I didn't enjoy as a player. I never enjoyed being in an environment of carrot and stick. I didn't enjoy being told what to do. I always enjoyed when I was empowered in my position, and I felt that I was doing things because I wanted to achieve. And that's my style. I believe in aspiration. I think when you create a group and you set certain goals and everyone thrives for those goals, I think you got purely people working towards it 24 hours a day. I don't believe in environments that only when the decision maker is looking, everyone is doing things because they are afraid of repercussions or to get punished. I don't believe in that style. I think it's a style that it's harder now in the new generation to get the best out of the individuals. And that's why when you are in a group of people that know everyone can be in a happy state, because in our case, for example, only 11 can start a game and we got 23, 26 players. I think you have to face those difficult conversations. You have to explain why, and you have to give an opportunity to that individual to reach their goal. Their goal is to start, to be in the lineup. I think it needs to be a lot of clarity. Why am I not in a happy space now? What can I do to get there? And I think those conversations are tough and they can be quite time consuming, but you have to take them. And I think that's always my advice to any group of businessmen where you got the decision maker or someone that needs to make decisions. You need to spend a lot of time to the people that they're not going to be happy in the group, because at the end of the day, they could be the difference between having a successful group or not. And I think the way to do it is being very clear, very honest, and give an opportunity for the individual to get to the level that it will give him the happy place.
Okay. Transparency and a little bit of aspiration help reaching out their own dream.
Yeah, clarity and honesty.
Is it important for you as a coach to get along with your players?
Yes. I think obviously it depends how you define getting along. I don't need to
you can define yourself.
Go away and spend time together away from football. I don't need that, but I think you need to have a connection. You need to have an understanding of why each member of the team is there. And I do believe on that. I think to get the best out of a group, you need to understand the human being that is behind the footballer. You need to understand why that person is there. And the why could be anything. It could be a financial reason. It could be just a question of making the family proud. It could be just achieving a dream of that person. And I do believe that any group in business is exactly the same responsibility for the leader. The leader needs to know why each member is there. And in order to reach those successful levels of performance, is because each individual is prepared to go beyond a 1%, a 2%, but to go beyond and to go that extra percentage, it needs to be an individual gain. We live in a very surreal world when we think that there is no I in team, that everyone should work extremely hard for the team. That's not realistic. If you want to get a very, very successful team, it's because you satisfy the I, you satisfy the individual first and foremost, and you give every individual that personal target by reaching the success of the team. And I think that's very important. You need to get an understanding why that individual is there, what would mean success for that individual, and then bring it together to the collective goal. And I think that's the only way that you can get the best out of a group of people working for something exceptional. Otherwise, you're going to get good performances when the things are easy, and then when the things are getting tough is when it's very easy to drop that percentage that makes a difference.
Yeah. That means talking a lot with your players, knowing them. But you were a coach of a a regular football club and now of a national team? Is there a difference between both?
Totally. I think obviously you got it's very clear you haven't got the same contact time. So at that point is different the way you have to operate. I think you learn to coach the players without having them with you, which I think that's been a very interesting aspect that I didn't believe that it could happen, and it can. After 6 years as a national team coach, I really enjoy coaching players without having contact with them. And that just from my point of view, I watch them, the way they play, even at times the situation that they live in the day-to-day, when they are disappointed, when they are really happy because they achieve success, how they perform at their best. And I think you bring in a lot of information that it gives you quality time when you see them. And it's all about using that quality time. It's important that the contact exists. I always feel that if you understand the player, you'll be able to make better decisions around that individual. And that's probably the biggest difference. At club level, you finish the day and you saw your player. Next morning, you see the player again. You win together, you lose together, you share those emotions. When you face adversity, you are together. And that's what develops a very strong bond and a strong relationship. At club level is a lot easier because it comes that way. International level, you got camps, 5 camps a year. Normally after a game, you lose your players. So that means that you cannot build on the success of winning. You cannot correct on the disappointment of losing. And that takes a lot away from a group. But it gives you other opportunities. I think you can become a neutral voice. You can become someone from the distance that it can give a completely different view. When you are the national team coach, you tend to bring good news all the time. And I think there is a different way to approach a relationship. And probably that's the big takeaway from me is that it's a completely different relationship, a different role, and you shouldn't expect to try to work in the same way. And it's the same in business. If you got a group of people, you need to try to get very intrinsic to what that group is and what makes it tick. And every relationship in each group is very, very different depending on the individuals at the end of it.
Yeah, but that means that as a national team, after the game, the players go, they will be managed in another way at their club level. So how does that feel to have to share your players with other projects?
It's not a choice. It's how it is. So then you accept it and you try to take advantage of it. I think when I look back, my 7 years as a club coach in the Premier League, I knew how special it was the time that the players went away to the national team. We could be in the middle of a very intense period, but the player really enjoys to play for the national team. And I think then when you're the national team, you need to understand that probably the solid day-to-day is essential in order for them to get that satisfaction of playing for the national team. And you can lose them, but you don't lose the dream and the overall goal that you have and you're working together towards. And I think that's what's essential, to have people committed to what the team needs. And I think probably the national team in the last 6 years, we had that commitment of wanting to be as high as we could in the world ranking and try to be as strong as we could be as a team to go into the major tournaments. And I think that continuity has been very clear from camp to camp. The players look like that we've been together for a long time. And I think that's that mental connection towards the idea and that aspiration that we were talking about.
Yeah. Aspiration, motivation is a hot topic. A psychologist once wrote, I don't know the name of the psychologist, excuse me, but she wrote that some players lack extrinsic motivation. They like the game, but they don't have the urge to get statistics or to get an award, and that means that they will not reach the real top. That's a shame for the individual, but it has an impact on the organization or the team as well. What do you think about that quote?
Yeah, I think in high-performance environment, I don't believe in motivation. A lot of people say, what do you do to motivate? Well, whatever you do to motivate is very different to what the individual will get from that action of trying to motivate people. Motivating people is a feeling. You cannot control it. Sometimes I've got players that they get in the morning very motivated, and then by the end of the day, they're not motivated at all. And you have to accept it. That's a human quality. I think we're all very naive when we start talking about terms of getting human beings to be fully motivated. It's a feeling. I would never work on motivation of a player. What I would work is on commitment, and it's very different. If I got a player that at 9 o'clock arrives in training and the session should start at 9:05, is very committed. If he arrive at 9:05 and is late 5 minutes, even though he could be very motivated, for me, it's not committed enough to the group. And I think that's a very clear aspect. You can work on the commitment of people, and you can measure the commitment of people. The motivation of people, you cannot measure it. It's a feeling, and you need to accept that it's going to rotate and it's going to have ups and downs, and that's totally fine.
Yeah. In a lot of sectors, and I work at the financial sector, so obviously in our sector as well, we tend to go for fair reward systems. Our employees ask that from us, and we find that important as well. But in football, the opposite happens. There are players that play at the same position, but there are significant differences in the way they are paid, for example. How do you manage those impacts, or are those differences not important?
Well, I think I would like to say that there is a reward system in the game, in sports, and in football. And normally what happens is that the career is very, very short. So what that means is that a lot depends on the timing, on the moment of when do you impress people, when do you have to sign a new contract. So as you can imagine, you got a career of 8, 9 years, 10 years to be at your very, very best from a financial retribution, but everything is rewarded base. You could be playing the same position, but I'm sure you got different type of age groups, you got different number of caps, different number of games. You could be the one that he only scores 1 goal, but it could be the winning goal in the Champions League final that will have a reward that is very different than if you scored 6 goals, but they were all when the team was winning 2-0. And I think as a player, it's not that factual moment that it gives you a reward, is the role of the responsibility and the respect that you have in a dressing room. And I think that's rewarded. I would want to believe that obviously in a pure business environment, everything can be very factual, down to figures and black and white. In football, you got emotions involved, you got mistakes. Football is a game of errors. Sometimes the best team doesn't win. And in the same way, being at the right time, at the right place, and being fortunate with injuries, which can change a lot of things, that can have a massive impact. So there is a bigger aspect that is out of your hands, that is more down to destiny, down to luck, and you have to accept it. But in general, is clearly a very much a rewarded business driven.
Yeah, you talked about contracts because players have to play for the next contract or for an upgrade maybe. That's kind of the thing when you work with contracts with a fixed duration. In football, that's common. But I noticed some coaches now are signing contracts of indefinite duration, like at Genk, Anderlecht and Brugge. Should the world that we live in, where that is common, change to fixed duration, or should it change in football? What's your opinion?
Yeah, I don't think there is a clear answer to that. I think it goes very much into the individual. And it is true that there are certain individuals that they need that short-term clear challenge to be at their best. And then they love to have the next motivation and where they're going to be looking at the next target. Other players, that is the opposite. They love to be in a comfort, that they have to be with real clarity of what they do, and they want that consistency. So then a rolling contract, let's say, will give them the best possible way to perform. And I think that's down to the club and down to how you want to use your individuals. But in general, when you got a short-term contract, you have to impress people. You always have to make sure that you show that you are at your very best and that gets the best out of you. So I do think that there is a good opportunity to take that sort of approach into the business world, and it would keep everyone really motivated. I think what you're mentioning about the coaches, I think is more a financial aspect. One thing is signing a rolling contract. Another thing very different is to give a coach 4 seasons to work. Yeah. And that would be very, very different. It would be very interesting when you got an institution that they are prepared to go through defeats and keeping the way of working and the coach in place. And I think we would see a very different way of building a football club or building a team. And that's something that it could be brought in from business and in elite sport. But I quite doubt it. I don't think you see that sort of approach. I think we're in a visceral world that we like to see consequences when the results are not achieved, and you are constantly looking for a reason why you didn't achieve. But clearly it's got, in terms of the contracts, I think it's more in an individual based. Even having both tools to be able to get the best out of individuals is a great aspect to have.
Yeah, there are certain clubs that only give 1 year contracts if the player has passed a certain age. From a risk mitigation perspective, that seems very normal. But from a people perspective, that's kind of heavy to catch, maybe.
No. I think as a person, you accept, if that's a general rule, you accept it.
Yeah.
What is not normal is if you are over 30 and you get a year contract and someone else, a teammate that is over 30, gets 5-year contract, then I think it's very difficult to take in a personal basis. But we all know that certain clubs, and that I remember Johan Cruyff, when he was a coach at Barcelona, he broke that rule and he played above the age of 32, I think it was then, that it would be only a 1-year deal. I think the players accept it, or you accept to be part of it, or you move away. But if you are there, it's not hard to take, because it's a rule, it's a way of working, and everyone is treated in the same. I think what's very difficult in group dynamics is to accept that there are not general rules, that people can be treated in a different way and people can get away with aspects. And that's why you have to be very clear. Everyone should be treated the same when you are in a group in discipline.
Yeah. A whole other topic is the rise of data. On a football level, data is part of day-to-day business, I think, nowadays. Yeah. How do you use data in your staffing for the national team?
Well, I think it goes down to decision-making. I think when you're a coach in my position, probably you got an average. I think it was a study that you had to make 7 decisions in a day. So the moment that you arrive in the office, you have to make 7 decisions. Clearly, when you make decisions, a good decision, the difference between a good decision and a bad decision is that the good decision is always based for a reason, even when the outcome is bad. And a bad decision, even if the outcome is good, is when you just do it as a feeling and you don't really have a reason for it. I think data brings you reasons. Data brings you the opportunity to analyze aspects and then allows you to make decisions based on something. So we analyze everything. I think nowadays the game has the possibility of measuring every physical aspect, every technical aspect, every tactical aspect of each team, of each individual. All that is very necessary. And when we prepare camps, when we prepare big tournaments, that's a big part of the selection of a squad. You need to make sure that everything is balanced, and the data gives you that. So data is essential. Data doesn't mean that it gives you the answer, but what it means is it gives you a reason to take an answer. And I think that's very important, and that's what we do use in the Red Devils staff, is that we provide ourselves with as much information, as much data as we can, even though the final decision is to be yours and is a combination of that data with your experience and knowing what affects certain individuals, what affects others, and try to give a context to that data. Data in itself is pointless, and too much data is pointless. What's important is that you got relevant data that is very specific and it gives you an answer to something that you're questioning. And data itself can be a problem. Questioning and interrogating data in the right way is what it gives you answers.
Yeah. Did you learn something from data you didn't expect?
Yes, many times. I think you, more often than not, you know when something works and what doesn't work. But it's very difficult to give the reason why. And I think data can give you those answers very, very quickly. It's very rare that you got a feeling about something and data proves you wrong. Very, 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 very rare. It happens because the reality is that nowadays everything gets measured. But I do feel that in order to go into a final conclusion, data is essential to put your feeling into a good line.
Yeah. In a team, there's an important role for a team captain. Which are the criteria that you use to select those team captain? And you can say data, number of caps, for example. But
I think there's no a given way of picking your captains. I think the way we do it is we like to empower the members of the team, and they choose the captain. In general, what you want in a captain is a captain that is aware of the others and that he or she has a capacity of thinking about others, and that they can carry the responsibility without affecting their own performance. At times we're thinking about that the captain is that person that wears the armband, and we don't think about the extra responsibility and the extra work that position brings. But in the Red Devils, we always allow the players to choose who they wanted to have as a leader, as the player that is a bit of a bridge between the staff and the players. And that's in our group, we're very fortunate of having 8 players that they are very close or over 100 caps, and they all have an incredible experience to push each other.
Yeah. All those players are top performers at their own club. How do you make them work together as a team?
I think is the very important aspect to have a reason to be together. I think the only aspect that it matters when you put a team together is that they have a reason to be fighting for each other, and they are prepared to put all the individual goals and all the individual feelings towards the success of the team. And I think that's creating a high-performance environment. The high-performance environment is 3 blocks, very, very clear, that we always differentiate. The first one is each individual needs to have their role very clear. They need to know exactly what their role is in terms of what they do on the pitch, off the pitch, but that needs to be something that they don't come up every day thinking or hoping that they can reach what is expected from them. The second is that you always need to find a way that the team enjoys the success of the team in order to achieve what they want to achieve as individuals. And then the final one, which is very, very important, is that is a constant improvement. Within those 2 aspects, that everyone's got a clarity in their roles and everyone's working to achieve something as a group and making history as a group, you need to make things better every time you're together. So in a course of 6 years, you cannot do things in the same way. You need to be able to, from week to week, even in business, if you can do a meeting in 6 minutes instead of 7, is an improvement. And you're creating that sort of high-performance environment. And everyone can have a high-performance environment. Even the way you take the kids to school can be a high-performance environment. How efficient can be talking to people, how efficient is taking the kids safe to the school environment. So it doesn't need to be just a sport. I think high-performance environment is people working effectively within each other to get a better outcome.
Yeah, even potty training for my daughter, she started today, is in a high-performance environment.
Exactly.
She likes the rewards, but she also gets a little bit of stress and gets anxious about performing at the top level. So mental health is typically something that's connected to such an environment. The stories about players with problems are not that common in media. So I don't think football is another sector than another. So mental health issues are important. What does your team do to cope with those problems?
Well, I think obviously to reach, one thing is to talk about the elite sport, for example. To arrive to elite sport as an individual, you had to go through many filters where you need to learn how to develop that mental resilience and how you can become strong from a mental health point of view. But it does happen that from time to time, as an individual, you change your environment. Sometimes you get married, sometimes you got a family, sometimes you got worries, you're going to change the club. There are many things that it could affect your mental health. And what you have to create is a safe environment where the player can express how he's feeling, and then that anxiety, let's say the performance anxiety, which is totally normal, is something that it needs to be open up and speak about it. And there are professionals in the medical aspect that they can cope with it very, very well. It is interesting because obviously we're coming from a period of maybe 10, 15 years ago. You were not allowed to show any weaknesses. It's the opposite. If you were not feeling right, you had to hide it. Anything that it could be a reason for not to play or not to be selected, you wouldn't show it and you wouldn't expose it. And I think now that's changing. It's very important in a match day that focus is there, that you feel invincible, that you feel on top of your game, that you can perform like you've never performed before. But between games, you're creating a safe environment, an environment that everyone can share the emotions, the feelings that they have, and then if we can address those, we know that the footballer behind the human being will perform better. So I think that's a way to create a safe and well-equipped professionally by people that they know how to cope in those circumstances.
Yeah, and that makes them perform and makes them happy. So I think we're at the end of this podcast. I really would love to thank you for your
it's a pleasure, Tom.
Enthusiasm and inspiration. And I thank everybody. And my key learning is that I'm not only motivated to do something with everything you told me, but also committed to do so.
I think you can control commitment. Motivation, it will depend even if the weather is nice or not. You will be more motivated or less. So you shouldn't leave the success of your career on motivation.
Thank you very much.
Voilà, it's a wrap. Tom heeft dat dus echt wel schitterend gedaan. Het zou me eigenlijk niet verbazen als hij binnenkort start met zijn eigen podcastkanaal. Vond je deze podcast fantastisch? Laat dat dan zeker weten aan de rest van de wereld. En ook aan Tom gaat hij ongetwijfeld kunnen appreciëren. En wil je misschien zelf eens in het hoofd kruipen van een centrale gast? Geef mij dan een seintje en overtuig me waarom jij host for one day wil zijn in deze podcastshow. En natuurlijk in wiens hoofd jij wil kruipen. Maar houd een beetje redelijk alsjeblieft. Het allerbelangrijkste weten jullie al, als je daar nu nog moet aan twijfelen. It's a great time to be in HR. Tot de volgende!